welcome again. Today we're going to talk about experiences we may have once we've decided to act in accordance with our consciences, obey the law, and stand in the truth about justice. Earlier in video number 4, I spoke about how we may be challenged by police, many of whom doubtless believe that they are upholding the law, but who are in fact acting as policy enforcers for private criminal corporations. I quoted part of what we call the caution card, an example of which can be seen here. Quote, "Under Article 61, I am lawfully bound to disobey all acts, statutes and legislative laws. As of invocation of Security Clause 61 of Magna Carta 1215 in March of 2001, all laws, acts and statutes are no longer of legal force, and wherewith all parliamentary governance and agents of the Crown are to stand down and consider their oath. If you obstruct me or attempt to enforce defunct acts and statutes, or attempt to extort money from me with fines, taxes or fees, please know you will be personally liable to loss of complete commercial assets and life in prison. Acts passed against constitutional law are treason. Denial of constitutional law is sedition. I will travel, assemble and speak freely without hindrance." Unquote. It's a good idea to be able to quote this verbatim, or failing that, to always carry an example to be read out if required. Quoting is better because it illustrates that we are fluent in our knowledge of where we stand. It contains basic information which is to inform any police officer attempting to transgress our rights of our lawful standing under Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta. The date of invocation is mentioned, together with the fact that all acts and statutes are now null and void, and all government and Crown agents are to stand down and consider their oaths. They are further warned that attempting to enforce defunct acts, statutes or legislation against us with the purpose of extorting money, unlawfully obstructing or detaining us, may result in them facing total asset stripping and life in prison. The fact that we are recording adds weight to the potential of this threat, especially if we're dealing with an officer who does know about Article 61. Also, it informs that passing acts against constitutional law are treason, which still carries the death penalty, and that denying this constitutional law constitutes sedition. We can also assert our lawful rights to speak, assemble and travel freely, without hindrance. These are powerful statements and have been known to reduce police to silence and for them to walk away without further ado. Of course, some officers may not know of this law, so we can inform them that ignorance of the law is no excuse now that they have been informed. We should always record any exchanges with police as soon as they start, informing them that whatever they say or do will be evidence against them at a future trial if they break the law themselves. It must be acknowledged that such confrontations can be initially nerve-wracking, because we have been conditioned throughout life that the police and the government are all powerful and have the power to punish us. It is still true that they may act against us, but informing them that we know the true law and that they are committing the most serious breaches of it is absolutely the right thing to do. One of the things those of us who have taken our oaths and started to resist this treason by sending out our notices have been experiencing is a very marked improvement in our spirits. We have met others who are also prepared to stand in the truth in defence of freedom and justice, and there is a great sense of camaraderie and a familial type of bonding which builds up as we all seek to learn more and assist each other and those who come to us for help, many times because they've heard something about people fighting back. There are numerous groups of people seeking ways to push back and bring an end to this oppression. Many of them are in various common law groups, which seek to use the legalese system to fight against the corruption. They have their successes, but the long-term problems remain, and they are always playing on away turf, as the sporting vernacular would express it. Gradually, these groups will come to understand that Article 61 is the sword that severs the Gordian knot of legality, deception and abuse. At a stroke, the oath-takers cut themselves free of all the fakery associated with pretend governments and criminal corporations, who are ultimately reluctant to go into their own legal system facing certain conviction of treason and sedition. They are left hoping that the day won't come when they must face properly constituted courts and trials by jury. However, as we persist in speaking out and standing up, the numbers of those aware of how we have all been deceived will continue to grow, and that day approaches more rapidly. The greatest difficulty any of us face is in coming to terms with the fact that virtually everything we have been told about our government and legal system is lies, based upon false premises. We have, for example, been told that if we don't pay government charges, utility bills, fines and fees, etc., that we'll be breaking the law. In fact, the opposite is true. We break the law by funding these criminal impostors. Can two concepts be any more diametrically opposed? Let's think about it. Are we all equal under the law? The legal system would have us believe so. If I disagree with something my neighbour does, do I have the right to write a rule forbidding that behaviour and fine him or her for breaking that rule, especially if that behaviour does no harm to me? Clearly not, if we are equal under the law. What about the situation in reverse? Same answer. They have no right to dream up rules and impose fines on me for not adhering to them. So what of the government? The government is an imaginary concept. It doesn't exist except as we conceive of it in the abstract. But in reality, it is made up of people, is it not? So from whence does the authority that those claiming to be the government derive, which enables those people to write down rules and fine or punish people for not obeying them? Clearly, it can only be so if all those subjecting themselves to those rules first give consent. The fact that some people devise things called elections and claim that because a majority voted one way, that those people have the right to impose rules and penalties on those who dissented from that view has no more validity than any individual proposing such penalties on their neighbour, if all, indeed, are equal under the law. Those claiming such authority must be able to show from whence it originates. Otherwise, no one is obliged at all to follow their directions. The two relevant legal maxims here are consensus facet et legem. Consent makes the law, and without consent there is no law. And the burden of proof is on him who affirms, not upon him who denies. There have always been a few people who have understood and held to the foregoing arguments, and sought to resist the lawless despotism which has increasingly held sway over the past 70-odd years. But we have never had a lawful way of effectively opposing it. Now, thanks to the barons, who had an understanding passed down through their families for centuries of their sacred duty to ultimately stand in defence of the Constitution, and have finally acted upon that understanding, we have been given the key to unlock the chains with which the traitors have sought to enslave us. Article 61, in effect, brings these two right up front and centre. We have every right to demand that those making claims provide substantive evidence of their authority. But in our current situation, we are 100% correct in telling those impostors outright that they have none. There is no more need to fear them or their agents, such as police, than to fear any other gang of criminals. But we have the advantage that they have chosen to try imposing their rule by deception, and have thus bound themselves by their own rules regarding honour. We are now able to expose that deception, and there is a tremendous sense of uplift and freedom when we do this. it is hard to describe. It's as if one had been wandering around blindfolded, struggling to feel our way through a maze of traps and pitfalls designed to keep us subservient, indeed enslaved, when suddenly the blindfold is removed and we see everything clearly in sharp focus. And it's virtually exactly the opposite of what we've been told. We are not subject to these impostors, but we have the power to make them answer to us for their crimes. All we must do is stand up and say so with our oaths, our notices, and our caution cards. Why anyone would not want to do this, or why they hesitate about claiming the freedom that is rightfully theirs and their children's, is baffling, given the abundance of evidence existing. Perhaps this quote from Anthony de Mello goes some way to explaining the phenomenon. Quote, "It is a great mystery that though the human heart longs for truth, in which alone it finds liberation and delight, the first reaction of human beings to truth is one of hostility and fear." Unquote. Be that as it may, these words of Leo Tolstoy remind us of the statement a couple of videos ago from Søren Kierkegaard about the relative validities of the majority and minority views. Tolstoy: "Wrong does not cease to be wrong because the majority share in it." We are fortunate to have Article 61 at our disposal because it empowers us to resist tyranny peacefully and lawfully. Throughout history, most tyrannies have had to be resisted by force, with much greater likelihood of bloodshed and loss of life. We will not have an easier chance to regain our freedom, and the question must be asked: if people are not prepared to fight for freedom, even if only with the pen and the spoken word, are they not justifiably condemning themselves to slavery and or bloodshed? Another question is, what type of human being will not claim their freedom when all they have to do is simply state that it is theirs? There's no doubt for rational thinkers and those willing to live according to truth and their consciences, which is the wrong way to go and which the right. Thank you for watching.